Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 4 of our podcast series. Today, we're going to be talking about business as a field and some of the potential career options that we can come out of it. And we have a few guests here today that I'm going to open the floor up to so that they can introduce themselves.
Okay, I'll go first. Hello, everyone. My name is Saad. I just graduated actually from McMaster University, so I just finished my fourth year. I specialize in accounting, and in August, I'm going to be starting work at PwC.
Yeah, so hey Saad. So hey everyone, my name is Hassan. I study at York at the Schulich School of Business. I'm heading into my fourth year and I'm planning on specializing in economics. And then afterwards, I'm planning to go to law school.
Hey, my name is Emad Ahmed. I'm going into my third year in the Rotman Commerce program at the University of Toronto St. George campus, and I hope to get into a career in management consulting after I graduate.
And my name is Faizan. I am pursuing a dual degree with Ivy's Business and Health Sciences. I'm still not 100% sure what I want to do, but this summer I am going to be interning at Pepsi for corporate finance. So maybe something along that route is something I'll pursue in the future, but I don't know. We'll see where the road takes us. So I just wanted to get started by asking you guys, when you were in grade 12 and when you guys had your acceptances, when you were considering different programs, what are some of the factors that you guys ended up considering before ultimately choosing one?
hmm Sure, I guess I'll go first. So my story was actually pretty unique. McMaster was my fifth choice. I didn't get into any of my top four. When I was in grade 12, I was really gunning for Waterloo AFM. I knew I wanted to do accounting, and that was a program I had like my sights set on. My older brother, who's in accounting, he told me, he's like, Saad, you should go into that program. So I tried pretty hard to get in there, and when I didn't end up getting there, I was like, okay, I'll look at my second choice. Okay, didn't get there either. Third, fourth choice, and I think at the last point, I think my fourth choice was Laurier BBA, and I was pretty confident I was going to get into that program because you needed I believe it was an 89 average, and I was pretty confident I had that. Then when I didn't get into the BBA, I got offered for economics. I was like, oh, what happened? And then I phoned them up and I said, like, hey, like I did my supplementary form. I had some pretty good extracurriculars. My average was pretty high. And they said that, at the time I thought the average was 88. Turned out it was 89. And my own average was 88.83. So I was as close as you could possibly be to the cutoff. That's like 1% in one course. So, like it's crazy how things work out. And like at that time I was just like, oh my God, like no way. I was expecting for like 4 or 5 months that like, hey, if anything, I'll get to like Laurier BBA and that will be like a great program. And then so Mac was my fifth choice, and at the time I was pretty disappointed. I was just like, hey, the reason I picked Mac, I only had like three options. I had Mac, Ryerson, or Brock. Um, Luckily for me, I had three older brothers, so I had a lot of their experiences and their friends as well who went to all those universities, and I was able to talk to them and get advice. So that's pretty much the research that I did. So using like my brother's friends, and so like anyone older who can help you out. Mac ended up working out really well for me, which I can get into later in this podcast, but I'm honestly very happy I ended up going to Mac.
Hey, and you landed PwC, so it all worked out.
Yeah, like I honestly, like the job I ended up getting was better than what I was expecting to get if I went to Waterloo, right? So it's crazy how things work out.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll chime in for a bit. I'd say similar to Saad, I was mentioning to you guys before, but like I remember in high school, Ivy and Schulich were like my top choices. I really wanted to get into both programs. I participated a lot in extracurriculars, had a pretty decent average in high school, but I didn't end up getting into those programs. And like Saad mentioned, like it kind of just worked out for the best of me, right? Like I'm really happy with where I am right now. But as far as how what my decision was to go into Rotman over, programs like Laurier or McMaster, it really had to come down to the program structure and the networking opportunities. So, being in Toronto, you're right, like you're very, very close to like the financial district. So you're maybe like a 2-minute subway ride or even like a 20-minute walk away from all of these different firms. So I ultimately felt that that would be such a great opportunity to kind of jump on, to get all those different networking experiences and stuff like that. And in terms of the program structure, I felt that having a very, very like a pretty defined structure would be really good in terms of, getting that experience in all those different fields, in finance, in marketing, and all those different kind of focuses that you can take on. And maybe we can get into later on what the different specialists at the Rotman Commerce program are. But I think having that structure in that program and being like smack dab in the city of Toronto really played a big part in my decision to go there.
Yeah. Yeah, those are pretty good choices. McMaster's pretty good for accounting, and Rotman's right downtown, so networking should be pretty easy. I mean, for me, I only applied to 2 business programs, so the decision wasn't really that hard. I think for me, I was just deciding between Schulich and Rotman. So, and I was kind of indifferent between the two, to be honest. I mean, when you're a high school student, you don't really know that much, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So I just chose Schulich because I think at the time there were like 5 high school students I knew that were going there. So I thought that would be like a good circle to have when I'm there, and it did work out pretty well. Um, but to be honest, I think people put too much pressure on the choices themselves. A lot of it comes down to your ability to network, the time you put into getting experience and stuff like that, and differentiating yourself from other candidates. So I don't think too much pressure should be put on making the right choice. Just try to make the most out of whatever decision you end up making.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah,
Sorry,
100%
Fazan. I just
agree.
wanted to chime in here. Like just what we were talking about before is that, when you're in grade 12, differences between universities that seem like this, like your fellow students are going to make them seem like way bigger, right? And it's in reality, it's not like that. Just like Hassan said, it's more about kind of like what you do when you go there, the networking and the other opportunities and experiences you actually take part in university. And those differences that you perceive in grade 12 as being so great are actually like a lot smaller.
Yeah, I think what you said about you putting yourself out there and nothing's going to be handed to you on a platter, no matter which school you're a part of. And kind of building off of that, I think something I did, which I would recommend people do, is if the schools that you're potentially looking for have employment reports, I would go and search those up, because those employment reports have a really good breakdown of industry. And if you're someone like me who has absolutely no idea at the time what I wanted to get into, you get a really clear idea of what type of people that are going to be at that school, what type of employers come and hire from there. So I know for Ivy, there was a really strong presence of banking and consulting. And consulting was just something that was I potentially considered. So I thought, that would be a good opportunity. And I don't know, but I think at Schulich, there's a greater emphasis on something like accounting than banking. So looking at those employment reports and looking at those stats would probably go a long way in potentially helping you choose something. And like you said, networking is like the cream of the cream of like business. Like without that, like you're not going to get anywhere. So that is definitely super, super important. Now getting into the programs a little bit more deeper, what was your experience like in general with all of your respective programs? And maybe you could talk a little bit about the type of people there are, the amount of competitiveness, the workload, just kind of those type of things.
Sure. I'll go first then. So Mac, I think is comparable to a lot of like, I guess you could say like mid-tier business schools. So like Mac, Ryerson, York U Business, Guelph, like a lot of these, like Southern Ontario schools, have comparable business programs. So I would say that your first 2 years are usually pretty structured in these types of schools. So you're doing like particularly at Mac, you don't specialize until your third year, right? Depending on what school you go to for business, you either specialize in your second year or your third year, right? So specializing would be choosing like, hey, do you want to study accounting, finance, operations, info systems, management, like whatever. There are a variety of fields. At Mac, you have about 8 choices. I know at different universities, you have other opportunities available to you too. Mac is more focused, Mac and other like mid-tier universities, like the ones I mentioned earlier, they're more focused on kind of preparing you to be an operative in a company rather than focusing on like general management science. So like I know, Emad, I think at U of T you're studying management and, sorry, what was it? Could you say it again?
Management with a focus in marketing.
With a focus on marketing, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'd have like an opportunity at like a school like U of T to study like management as like a field on its own. We're like as it's like universities like Mac or Ryerson, it might not be like management on its own, but you kind of learn it like as part of other courses, right? But it wouldn't be like your stream. You wouldn't really be in a management stream. As far as competitiveness and workload, I didn't find it to be very competitive or a heavy workload. I guess that's one of the benefits of going to a school like Mac. You can be like a big fish in a small pond. I found that the program, it really depends on everyone in terms of difficulty. So the funny thing is, my first semester was my best semester in all of undergrad. And my first year, second semester was my worst semester in all of undergrad. So in first year, I had like my high point and my low point, and everything else after came like in between there. So in terms of how hard programs are and how hard coursework is, because you're always kind of told that, hey, if you're coming in as like an A student, you should be ready to be getting C's and stuff, right? And you shouldn't expect to get, like, if you got A's in high school, you can get A's in university. And that's the mindset I was going in with, right? So I was prepared to like get like a C and just be like, okay, like that's like my new reality, right? So yeah, I guess it really just depends what perspective you're coming in with. But in any case, generally speaking, if you do what you're supposed to do as a student, you'll be okay. What does that mean? That means like actually going to lecture. Like, some of you guys are gonna have Freedom University, so you're gonna be like, hey, I'm just gonna skip like my 9:30 a.m. class. It's gonna seem like it's impossible to go to. Whereas in high school, like I'm pretty sure every day start at 8:30, right? So you guys are already in that routine. No need to make any bad habits now and start skipping classes. First year, go to class. Like, that's what I'd recommend. Take notes. Like, do the homework questions. If you do everything you're supposed to do, you'll find that like it's pretty good. The other really big piece of advice I have for first year and just joining any business program is that you need to sort of put yourself out there in first year. I think that's the biggest life hack, is that what the majority of students are doing is that they're thinking, okay, you know what? I'm just going to get used to things in first year. I'm not going to do any extracurriculars until like later on second year. Because that's what everyone does, you'll find that if you follow the same path, you're not going to be like top tier. You're not going to be like one of like the top students. All I did when I was in first year is that I applied to like join the Degree Accounting Association. I remember I applied to be like the first year representative. And I think at the time they're only considering like 3 people for at the interview stage. So I did my interview, I got the position, and honestly, I didn't even have to do that much work. Maybe I committed like 1 hour or 2 hours, like 2 hours a week towards that extracurricular. But what did I get from that? I was able to talk to upper year students in second, third, fourth year, and fifth year who returned from internship about like the accounting field, what I should be doing, what it's like. And there's all this, like, I guess for me, like the theme of like getting to know what you're supposed to do in university is just talking to older students, right? Talking to students at your level is not the best idea because there's a lot of misinformation. So same for you grade 12s, or if you're in grade 11 and watching this, talking to other grade 11s or grade 12s is not the best way to get information because there's a lot of misinformation. But talking to older students who kind of gone through it, who can help you a lot, that is like a gold mine, basically. So that's what I did. I just kind of got involved with extracurriculars from an early stage. And you'll find that once you get involved in first year, it's super easy to get a high position in second year. So that sort of stuff helps out. You get used to networking right in the beginning. When everyone else is scared, you already kind of like know what you're doing. And then also you have these older students that you can always go to for help, right? And they're willing to help you out, right? Like they'd love to. So I guess that's like the summary of what I would say. It's like just do what you're supposed to do as a student and then get involved in extracurriculars.
Yeah, Saad brings up a couple good points with like extracurriculars in school and stuff. Going into U of T, my older brother went to U of T for life sciences, so I kind of had an idea of how difficult it would be. But there's so many misconceptions about like, oh, U of T is like such a hard school, blah, 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 like you won't be able to do anything. And I kind of took that to heart. Like, honestly, in first year, I didn't get involved with anything. In high school, I was involved with drama, with extracurriculars, with volunteer work. I was involved with everything. And then I kind of just gave all of that up when university came, because I was just like, like Saad was mentioning, like, I need to focus on my grades. University is going to be hard. I'm an A student in high school. I can't drop to a C. So that mentality kind of just like messed with me a little bit. I lost with a little, like, I kind of diverted a little away from my passions and stuff like that. And then with my first semester was not that amazing. It wasn't really like that fun. So I was like, all right, what am I doing? Like, I gotta get involved and stuff like that. And I felt like Rotman really gave me a lot of different opportunities, and just being at U of T in general gave me a lot of different opportunities to get involved and stuff like that. And, being able to balance like schoolwork and extracurriculars and stuff really helped me grow as a person, put myself out there, like Saad was mentioning. But I think as far as my program goes and the competitiveness goes, it's pretty competitive. Like just as much as it is to get in, like they say, I think it's like a 15-20% chance that you get into 15 or 20% of the applicants that applied to Rotman actually get into Rotman. And a lot of the percentage, I'd say maybe around like 40 to 50% of the people in my class are international students. So U of T has this huge like international presence as as being such a large public university. So a lot of people from the States come, a lot of people from like China and India and Pakistan come. So all their academic standards in other countries are very, very high as well. So as far as the competitiveness goes in my program, it's pretty competitive. So it's pretty cutthroat in that sense. Also, you hear a little bit about how U of T is like really, really hard and stuff like that. U of T's economics programs are known to be very, very difficult. So consistently in first year, the class averages, in first and second year, you have to take mandatory economics courses, and their class averages are notoriously around like C plus, B minus, right? And you go into it, like I was going into it saying, oh, I took AP economics, I know what I'm doing, like I already know economics, and I finished very close to the class average, to be completely honest. And it's all just about not underestimating things, and doing the right research to combat that sort of competitiveness and make sure that you're in the right academic standing. But as far as like the difficulty of the program goes, I think all university programs are going to be difficult to some sort of an extent. But to speak about U of T, it definitely is a little bit harder than, or as hard as people make it seem. I definitely find that completely true.
Yeah, I can definitely like relate to a lot of points that both of you guys just made. So for Schulich, how the structure works is that we specialize in third year, so it's like McMaster, and then you pick whatever. I kind of like that structure because my first 2 years I didn't really know what was going on. So to get a chance to study some business courses and kind of see what I like, I kind of appreciated that. And for me, I would say adjusting to university was a little harder. So for me, first year was the hardest, and then second year was a little easier, and then third year was the easiest when you're starting to pick courses you like. So that's not necessarily the case with everybody. Some people find first year easier just because sometimes the course load is easier in first year, but that's just how it was with me. In terms of competitiveness, I guess it's kind of competitive at Schulich as well. Obviously, everybody has high academic standards. And the way it works at Schulich is that the classes are rather small, so like 40 to 50 students, and then we're graded on a curve. So they basically take the marks you have at the end of the semester and then they rank you based on those marks, and then they'll assign you grades. So that makes it kind of competitive because obviously everybody wants to be at the top of the curve because their mark depends on that. But still, like I got a lot of resources, like people share resources. If you reach out to upper years, people will share resources. So which is great. And I think a great thing to do is to join clubs. You get to know people on a personal level and it just makes everything easier, especially if you have classes with them. You can chill with them outside of school. That just helps overall. And I guess it's also something else that's kind of competitive is I noticed when I would go to the networking sessions they had at Schulich, it's a little difficult. Like, for example, I went to a TD banking session and there were literally like 100 students there and like maybe like a dozen reps. So every representative would have like a dozen Schulich students around them. Very hard to get, any FaceTime with recruiters. So I recommend you go out on your own, go to events that aren't necessarily on campus only, reach out to people for coffee chats if you want to get to know people on a more personal level. That just kind of makes you more of a standout. But yeah, overall, it's not that competitive. You just need to be smart about it.
I think kind of in contrast to what some of you guys mentioned with Ivy, there is no real specialization at Ivy because it's a 2-year accelerated program. So the first year, everyone's doing all the same courses. And in second year, it's not like you choose a particular specialization like economics or banking or anything. You just take the courses that you're interested in or the field that you're pursuing. So if people who are going to investment banking, they're going to take courses like private equity and capital markets and things like that. For people who are doing accounting, they're going to take audit and tax. One thing I liked about Ivy was that because it's a general management school and there is no real specialization, they sort of teach their classes in a case-based method, which I personally enjoy because it's a lot more entertaining and I think the information is a lot easier to grasp when it's a class discussion. So you would go in class, the first 10 minutes, you would have done the readings and you would have read the cases from beforehand. So it's a lot of prep on your own end. You come into class, everyone has read the case, you discuss just the case facts for the first 10 minutes, and the rest hour is just a class discussion and deriving insights from what you've read from the readings and the case. And I enjoyed that because you sometimes get to challenge your way of thinking. You kind of understand different people's perspectives, because someone like myself who came from a science background had a much different perspective than someone who came from an econ background or from an eng background. And another thing I liked about Ivy is that you are able to do a dual degree. So I have a few friends that are in engineering who are doing software eng and Ivy's business, and then they do like a PM role at Microsoft or Apple or something like that. So I think it's good in that you get to delay your decision if you want to delay it, or sort of combine the two. In terms of competitiveness, I think it's competitive getting into Ivy because the first 2 years, everyone's kind of trying to get the grades up, doing ECs, all of that stuff. But once you get in, it's like Hassan said, the average, no matter what happens, your class could be full of Einsteins, has to be an 80%, no matter what. So the kind of challenge becomes, everyone's trying to get above an 80, and obviously everyone getting into the program is smart. Like the first 2 years, they've had an average of like 85 or whatever. So now the new 85 becomes an 80. So now you're like competing against everyone who's like really smart. So in that sense, it's competition, but people are willing to help out. And there's a running joke at Ivy where like we never get feedback for any of our exams. It's like it's any grade between 78 to 82, you just accept it, no questions asked. If you're lucky, you get above an 80. If you're unlucky, you get below an 80. So I think that's one of the drawbacks of that, is that you can't really academically know your real standing. It's just like somewhere between 78 and 82. It is what it is. But yeah, that's just kind of what Ivy's like. I think the main thing, or the main takeaway would be that there's no specialization and it's a general management school. So if that's not something you're looking into, then that's something to consider for sure. So I guess the next thing I wanted to ask, which is I think one of the more important parts of business is, what are your post-grad plans and what are you hoping to get out of this business degree in terms of what stream you're trying to go into? Because I think there's a misconception that business is only accounting and finance, whereas in reality, it's so much more. So if you guys want to share your thoughts on that.
Okay, so I'll start off. So I had a very traditional route and a traditional approach. Around about late grade 11, early grade 12, I knew that, okay, I want to do accounting, maybe finance, but the default is accounting. So I started off first year. I took like an extra interest in my accounting courses, joined the accounting clubs, things like that. I was pretty set on accounting. I did an internship at PwC last summer. So the summer of 2018 to 2019, that was a school year. So basically 2019 summer is when I did my internship. So that was an assurance or audit, which is kind of like if you want to go into accounting, that's like the top job you're kind of gunning for, is an assurance or audit job with the Big Four. And there, you're going to feel a lot of competition and I guess stress trying to get that. But I guess just know that if you start from first year, it will help a lot. And of course, there are plenty of great places you can go to work. Post-grad, so I'm going to be returning to PwC in a slightly different role. So instead of assurance and audit, I'm going to be in essentially like merger and acquisition advisory. So it's more of a consulting role. It's a bit more finance oriented, but it's still a CPA route. So I'm still going to get my CPA designation, which is what pretty much every accounting student is going for. In terms of things like an MBA or any other types of master's degrees in business, that's not really something I'm looking for right now. For the majority of students, if you want to do an MBA with the business undergrad, it usually makes more sense like down the line, not immediately out of university. It does depend on like what field you're in though, and there's a lot of factors, right? For the average student though, it doesn't make much sense if you already have a business undergrad, unless you're a few years down the line, you know you need it for a certain promotion or a certain like job, or like essentially you just have an opportunity to kind of like switch gears a little bit, because there are now some specialized MBA programs that are out there, and they can be quite nice. And if of course your company's paying for it, because MBAs are quite expensive. One thing I actually learned very recently is that a lot of these engineering master's programs, you actually get paid to do it. instead of us where you pay to do it. Yeah, like a lot of these, like I think research-based ones, they actually get a salary, and it pretty much covers the cost of their tuition and more. Usually, I don't know about everyone, but I know at Mac, like that's actually pretty common. I was kind of like mind blown. I only found this out recently because the average MBA in Canada is like what, like 50, 60K, right? So it's like there is that opportunity cost where like instead of working, you're gonna be focusing on that MBA. That's why it doesn't make as much sense to do it right out of your undergrad because you're generally not gonna be realizing any gain from that right out of your undergrad. But MBA, I guess we can talk about more. I think you guys will also have different opinions. But yeah, so those are my own postgrad plans and my thoughts on
I have a quick question for you.
MBA.
So, what made you choose like accounting as a field? Because you mentioned your older brothers were part of it. So, I'm wondering, like,
Yeah, yeah,
apart
yeah.
from that influence, what was it that kind of pushed you?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the way I saw it when I was in high school, I had the typical, like brown kid mentality. I was like, all right, I can go into business, or I can be an engineer, or I can be a doctor, right? So then for medicine, I was like, I don't know, man. I might not get into med school. That seems kind of scary. Yeah, I'm not the type to like memorize a bio textbook. Engineering, I was just bad at math. I knew calculus was going to give me a tough time, so I didn't want to do that. So I was like, all right, I'm left with business. In there, I was like, I'm not really like, at least in high school, I really didn't see myself as like the creative type. So I was like, okay, marketing is gone. Um, IT info systems, that was like sort of there. And then aside from that, I only really knew about finance and accounting. I didn't know about like any other field per se, right? I didn't know what else you could do aside from, oh, maybe like HR, but I wasn't really into HR either. So I just thought accounting because, yeah, I had two brothers who studied accounting. My dad was like, yeah, it's good, you might as well do it. And then I guess I always had that idea that when you do study accounting, and I believe this now too, is that when you have the CPA, it gives you a lot of transferable skills, and you can kind of go into any field you want to after. So one trend you'll notice is that a lot of people study accounting, very few people stay in accounting, right? Most people get the CPA and then they switch to like a different field. So you'll see it's very common that like CPAs end up in finance careers, right? They end up as CFOs, or they end up in like other business development roles because with the CPA, the skill you get, similar to how a doctor can look at like your charts of like a patient and be like, oh, okay, like this is what's going on inside of a patient, heart rate, his chemicals, whatever. I mean, I'm not a medicine guy. I don't know. Hassan might be rolling his eyes right now, but yeah, like as similarly how a doctor can like look at like these indicators of like your health and be like, okay, I know what's going on with you, is the kind of the same way how someone who knows accounting can look at the financial indicators of a business and be like, all right, I know what's going on here. I know where like there's a waste of effort. I know what's driving value, things like that. It helps support that. So getting a CPA and studying accounting really helps when you're moving into different fields, and it gives you like a very good technical base, which I think is pretty valuable. If you're not too sure what you want to do, it helps a lot. But of course, don't just like go straight into accounting if you don't want to do it, and if it's just like your parents forcing you, like, hey, do accounting. Like you have some freedom in university, but that's why it stood out to me. It was a very transferable degree. I felt like it aligned with my skills. I could have accounting in high school, by the way, and I did pretty well. I liked it, so there was also that as well. So I got to try it a little bit.
Yeah, one of the really attractive things I found about the Rotman Commerce program was that, like, contrary to what you guys have in your programs, we actually specialize in our second year. So there's three different specialists. There's accounting, there's management, and then there's finance. And then within each specialist, like in accounting, you can go into like financial statement analysis or public accounting or whatever. So I chose to go down in management because your career path is never linear, right? You have so many. I personally had so many examples, and like my family, like my dad back home, he was a doctor, but he came here, he couldn't practice medicine, so he actually went into business, right? So for me, a lot of it had to do with like really not closing a lot of different doors. So I chose the management specialist because it had so much flexibility. Like you could still study accounting and be in management. You could still study finance and be in management. I know a lot of different people who are, minoring in different things because there's that arts and science flexibility. So I know people who are minoring in computer science or minoring in psychology or sociology or whatever, right? And I know my parents, like deep down, they've always wanted me to be a lawyer. Like I've always had some sort of like an interest and a passion for it, but I just knew that I would never want to like swamp myself with paperwork or whatever. I just never wanted that kind of life for me.
Yo, you're taking shots at Hassan right now, bro.
No, like right here, bro.
No. Everyone's different, right? Like for a long time, I thought I really wanted to be a lawyer. So I wanted to do like, part of the reason why Ivy was so attractive to me was that, I could do the law dual degree, the JD HBA, right? So that's why I kind of really wanted Ivy. If I like looking back at it, if I had gotten Ivy, I probably would be going down the law route. But like now I really feel that there's so many different things I can go into. So part of the reason why I really want to go into consulting is that, or management consulting in particular, is that, there's so many different things you could do within management consulting, right? You could practice like healthcare management consulting. You could practice in corporate finance. You could practice in like mergers and acquisitions and deals and stuff like that. So there's so many different things. So me being the kind of person who I've always wanted to do all these different things. Like I've done drama in high school. I've done athletics in high school. I did volunteer work. I did cultural stuff in high school. I always wanted to do like a lot of different things, like, and require like a breadth of different activities and stuff like that. So I feel like going into something like consulting will really give me like that breadth of everything. And further down the line, I hope to find like some sort of a passion in one of those fields and, specialize in that sort of thing. And then like Saad was mentioning, like an MBA is kind of like, I 100% agree with him saying like it's not something you should be thinking about now. It should be something you should be thinking about later when you want that kind of promotion, or you want to gain that sort of like flexibility and sort of special and maybe even specialize in a particular like field like supply chain management or management accounting or something like that. But I think for now I just want to focus on like getting a job in consulting, really figuring out what my passions are, and then just kind of rolling with the dice and just seeing how everything flows out.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to both of them as well, because when I was going into Schulich, my plan was to go to law school afterwards. But then, I mean, you're 4 years in a business program, naturally you're going to explore different things. So the first thing I was looking into was accounting, because in first year I took a lot of accounting courses. And so I realized I liked accounting courses. I never actually took any in high school. So when I took it, I was like, this is pretty interesting. And then I started networking a lot, going to a lot of case comps for accounting, and I did end up liking it. But then I realized, like, I mean, for me personally, I was like, man, this might be a little too like narrow of a focus. Maybe I want it to be more broad. So then going into second year, I got a lot more interested in, even in third year, I got a lot more interested in consulting, management consulting, like Emad mentioned, because there's a lot of flexibility in that. And, from what I heard from people who are in those sort of roles, you learn a lot in a couple of years that you do management consulting, and then usually end up shifting out into something else. But at the end of the day, I just stuck with law school because, I realized like, those are all cool options, but that's kind of like what I was interested in the beginning. And I feel more confident in my decision now that I've explored other options and spoken to people who went down those routes. And I think, like, as mentioned, like, it's important to remember that just because you go down accounting or consulting doesn't mean you just stay in that route for like the rest of your career. It is like really easy to shift out and do something different. Like, just go on LinkedIn and look up a bunch of people's profiles, and you'll see that people are in certain roles, but they studied something or they did something earlier in their career, and you'd be like, how did that even happen? Like, where's the relation? People aren't like stuck in one career. You can, as long as you find the right network and you pursue the right opportunities, you can end up in just about anywhere. There's not like one path to a certain position or a certain place.
Yeah. One thing I kind of just realized is that we've talked about a few different careers quite a bit, but I think some of the students might not know what exactly like management consulting is or investment banking is. Emad, since you're looking specifically into management consulting, do you want to like share like a little bit just about like what that actually is?
Yeah, to be honest, like with a lot of these different careers, like you won't really know exactly what you're doing until like you actually jump right into it. But I have a couple mentors myself, and I go on different coffee chats with different consultants at different firms and stuff like that. And it's a very like project based field where you kind of jump right into things, and there's this kind of like very common phrase in the consulting world, and it's just like fix it, right? So consultants are often referred to as like the doctors of the business world, right? So businesses have different problems, whether it's in like their finance department or their accounting department, or how a company is organized or whatever, right? So they hire these consultants, they hire these management consultants for whatever issue they have, and they say, hey, fix it. Like, we have this problem. Here's a project for you to delve in a little into, and then let us know how we can fix our business, kind of thing. This is like the most efficient way to implement all these ideas, blah 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 blah. But as far as consulting goes, like, there's so many different possibilities about what you can actually work on.
Yeah, to sort of echo exactly what Emad said, I think management consulting, if you break down the words, it's literally giving advice to C-suite executives. That's ultimately what you're doing. And I think one of the biggest benefits of that is because, like Emad mentioned, there are problems in every function of a business, be it in finance or marketing or HR or what have you. And so what that allows is that because there's so many functions, there's also a greater possibility for these functions and these industries to have issues that you need to solve. So you could very likely be doing supply chain for 1 year, and then the next year you might be doing mergers and acquisitions or something along those lines. So from that standpoint, it's a really, really good learning opportunity. And you get to dip your feet in the water of multiple different industries, which make for a really good exit opportunity, because management consultants have a bit of a stigma of having a pretty poor work-life balance. It's like you grind the first like 5-6 years, and then you kind of transition out into something a little bit more stable because you might have your own personal goals or whatever. So in those 5-6 years, though, you work a lot, you work with really smart people, and you get a lot of experience, which does pay out later on and during consulting as well, because it does pay well. So ultimately, that's what it is. With respect to investment banking, I'm not in banking, but from what I know, they serve two purposes. Number one is to help private companies go public with with helping them with their IPOs. And the second purpose is to facilitate like mergers and acquisitions between companies. So for instance, when Best Buy bought Future Shop, an investment bank would kind of step in and help facilitate that transaction to make sure it goes smoothly. Or if, for example, with respect to the IPO, for a while, I think Tesla was private. And then so when they did decide to go public, an investment bank would come in, they would buy Tesla stocks, and then they would then resell them on the stock market. So that's sort of the function of investment banking. You're dealing with a lot of debt and equity. That's just kind of what the nature is. So yeah, Hassan can talk a little bit more about law because I don't know too much about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know that much about it either. I'm not actually in law school yet, but for instance, like, because I have a business background, like, it'd be easy for me to shift into law school, because a lot of, like, one of the most common professions is corporate law. And a lot of what they do is they work with mergers and acquisitions, kind of facilitating those types of transactions. And you could even go into public law, which is more to do with like the judicial system and stuff like that. To be honest, it'd probably be best you ask a law student more about the specifics. But if you want to know if you want to go into law school, just think about like what type of courses do you like? Do you like reading? Do you like reading and writing? Do you like doing research? Like, do you think law itself is interesting, like the philosophy behind it, or the concepts behind it? If you think that sort of stuff is interesting, that's kind of a start. And then you just reach out to people who are in law school. Like, I didn't reach out to too many lawyers personally because it's hard to get into contact with lawyers, but you reach out to law students. They've spoken to lawyers, and gives you a good idea of what law school is like. But yeah, I mean, probably ask me a couple years from now and I'll have a better answer.
Yo, Hassan, I have a question for you actually. So you applied to Ivy and you got accepted. So what made you choose what made you stay at Schulich and consider Schulich law versus what Emad was talking about with the Ivy and the law dual degree?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like one of the reasons why I did apply to Ivy was because they have the JD HBA program, which is accelerated. For me, the reason why I stayed at Schulich is because with that, although it's accelerated, like, you finish undergrad and law school in 6 years, as opposed to me, I would finish in 7 years. With that, I would only have one choice of a program, which would be Western. And I kind of wanted more flexibility. I personally, like, I never really know what I want to go with until like pretty close to the deadline. So by staying at Schulich, was able to get higher grades because at IB you're kind of around 80%. You can't get higher than that, or like not that much higher. But with Schulich, I can get higher grades and I have more flexibility with my options. If I want to go to U of T, if I want to go to Osgood, which is right here at Schulich, I can do that. Not saying you can't do that at Ivy. It's just you have more flexibility at Schulich, and you have to consider the cost differences. Ivy is a really expensive program, and to be honest, like if I was going to go to, I would recommend going to Ivy if you want to pursue a job right out of Ivy. I don't think Ivy and law school, it's not a bad pairing, but it's like maybe go to a slightly easier program where you can get higher grades, because that's kind of what admissions are based off of for law school, just grades in your LSAT.
So the last thing I wanted to touch upon was, I think for myself, and I was in the same class as Hassan, so we really didn't even take any business courses before choosing a business program, which is not the smartest idea in hindsight, but that's just what it was. Do you guys want to talk about any misconceptions within the particular field that you want to get into, or sort of business in general, as compared to when you guys were in high school? Now that you've experienced it, what are some of those misconceptions that you think are not true, or are very, very true potentially as well?
Okay, I guess I'll start. So I guess one thing is I'll talk about particularly accounting and then business in general. So as far as accounting goes, what you cover in high school is more so bookkeeping. So it's like if you've taken a high school accounting course, it's mostly just recording journal entries, debits and credits. While you do that in first year, and you will do that pretty much just in first year, a little bit in third year, that's not what accounting is really about. That's just kind of like the basics, so you can see like, okay, what's happening at like the smallest level. Accounting is more so like kind of those bigger picture decisions. So right now, like I'm in a graduate program at Rotman. Actually, it's like a 12-week program where I am preparing for the CFE, which is the common final evaluation. It's to get your CPA designation. And in that, it's entirely case writing, right? So we look at a case, we look at bigger picture issues. We're not so much doing those journal entries anymore, but we look at an issue and you have to be able to identify, okay, reading these case facts, okay, this is like a financial accounting issue. Okay, now which IFRS standard is it in violation with? Okay, you kind of have to know that, or you have to refer to the CPA handbook and be able to kind of like write down a coherent explanation, argument on like, hey, what's the problem here? What's the correct treatment? And then what is the actual going to be the impact on the financial statements, right? For like bonus points, you can write down like the actual journal entry that you would recommend so to fix it. But like journal entries are not really kind of like the core component of accounting anymore. It's more so of like the bigger picture, right? So I think one common misconception students have about accounting is that, okay, you're just looking at debits and credits. Oh, accountants are really good at math. That's a really good misconception. We just do plus, minus, divide, multiply. Divide, multiply is even like not even that common. It's usually just adding and subtracting. We don't do all that much math. I'll tell you that firsthand. I barely passed first year calculus. So trust me, like accountants don't need to be good at math. As far as business in general, I think people underestimate how transferable it is. You can really go into anything with the business undergrad business degree. You get equipped with a wide range of skills, and I think it's more so your soft skills that will carry you rather than your hard technical skills. So soft skills are things like teamwork, communication, and so on and so forth, versus actual like technical skills like, oh, I can do like Excel, or I can do like that. Like sure, that those things are important, but in terms of like when you're networking or how you're going to get a job, I think actually we should discuss networking afterwards. That might be something that's kind of scary for a lot of these grade 12s and grade 11s.
Yeah.
But usually your soft skills are kind of going to be your bread and butter. Your technical skills, your hard skills, they're just going to be like a check mark. Like, oh, does this person have like the sufficient requirement, like the minimum they need to do this job? Boom, that's your technical skill. And then after that, it's usually your soft skills. How's this person as a team member? How would this person be as a manager? Are they a good communicator? Things like that. Yeah, so I think those are the common. Go ahead.
I haven't done accounting, but this
Mm-hmm.
is a misconception that I've heard, that accounting is a little bit more dry and boring. And you've already done an internship at PwC. Sorry, I'm being a little bit blunt.
Yeah,
But, could you speak to that from your experiences with
yeah.
actually
For
doing
sure.
it?
Good. So this is like one of the times I feel like I can give like a completely honest opinion because I'm not actually representing PwC right now. The accounting internship, so there's about 40 interns when I did it over the summer. and I got like the short end I got like the short straw out of everyone. I think the work I got like 3 different jobs, and consistently I got like the most basic level work. Some of my friends were doing like work that was at like really cool, and it was like at a much higher level than what I was doing. But the work I got pretty consistently was like very basic work, and I was sitting there half the time like, yeah, how come this isn't automated yet? Like, what am I doing? Right? That actually is a pretty interesting. Like, if you know like computer science, or I mean, that's one thing I recommend for almost anyone. Like, do like a comp sci minor if you can. Knowing how to program is actually going to be very useful whatever field you go into. But yeah, if you can identify things where you can speed up the process, you should like speak out and like do that, right? So one thing I noticed that like, sure, like at the base level, the work is like, you're right, it is kind of dry, right? But the thing is, like, once you get your CPA designation, that does open up a whole lot of new possibilities. That's also kind of the reason I ended up getting out of audit. So I switched from like when I did my internship in audit and assurance. Yeah, while I did have like an unlucky experience where I got like a lot of the basic work, I still generally wasn't too satisfied with like having my next 3-4 years be in this career, which is why I ended up switching. I was pretty lucky actually. I got like I applied to switch to M&A advisory, and I got that. And I'm looking a lot more forward to that because I feel like there's a few more, it's a different exit opportunities, different career opportunities, and even within the group I'm in, like what I'm really interested in is corporate advisory and restructuring. So looking at troubled companies and being like, okay, how can we turn this around? Right? And that's actually something that really captures my attention. While I'm using a lot of the same skill sets that I learned in my accounting undergrad, I'm now applying them in a different context, a different scenario, something that I find a lot more interesting than the traditional audit, right? So I'll be honest, yeah, like I'm not telling you audit's going to be like super amazing and fun and everything, right? Or accounting's going to be super fun. You come out with, I mean, the reason you go into it, it's a stable career. You come out with a good skill set, and then once you learn accounting, you can move away from accounting. Very few people who study accounting stay in accounting. You move away pretty quick. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, Saad brings up a lot of great points about accounting and stuff like that. But just stepping back a little bit, like a lot of people look at business and they're like, yeah, I can only go into accounting and I can only go into finance, right? Without really knowing too much about what exactly they are. But in reality, like we mentioned multiple times before, that there's so many different things that you can do in business. So like there is accounting, there is finance, but there's different facets in accounting. There's different facets in finance. You can go into consulting, you can go into like supply chain, you can go into M&A. Like there's so many different things. So I guess my advice to a lot of the people who are going to be watching this is really do your research. Like don't fix yourself on one job, because like my dad always tells me that, you know, your career path is never going to be linear. You can never predict that kind of thing. So just keeping a lot of your options open is great. And I think business programs do a great job with that. As far as Rotman goes, there is like a huge misconception that like, oh, it's very just like book smart people. It's really, really hard. They only care about your grades. And I completely disagree. I think in the first and second year, Rotman is like pretty notorious for being very, very difficult. But at the same time, third and fourth year are known to be very, very easy. In terms of like, you know, you start to like the sort of courses you're taking, and your courses get a little bit more case-based and stuff like that. So as far as Rotman being a little bit more of a technical program, I disagree. I did a lot of like HBS, Harvard Business School cases this year, and a bunch of my different courses, and I thought they were awesome, and they really helped me learn in you know, in a little bit more of an unconventional way. So I definitely think, like if you think Rotman is you know, too hard, maybe like delve into the program a little bit more. And like Saad mentioned before, like you start to develop a lot of these like skills, soft skills, like teamwork and stuff like that, within all these like business programs and stuff like that. So not only will you develop a lot of like the technical skills in a business program, like you'll develop a lot of different soft skills. Like I work a lot with different groups, and my business program has really like opened me up to a lot of different extracurriculars, you know, case competitions, that sort of thing. And you know, being in Toronto as well, like it's such a great opportunity to network, which hopefully we talk about in a couple more minutes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you guys hit upon the two biggest misconceptions that I think that at least I saw in grade 12. So I just wanted to open up the floor for any last minute advice like networking or anything else that you guys wanted to mention before we wrap up.
For sure. So I think I'll talk about networking a little bit. Um, Even as a grade 12, grade 11, and even as a first year, networking can seem really scary. And like, what is it really? I remember I walked into like a networking event like in maybe like the second or third week of my first year, and I didn't know what to expect. I don't know if it was like a job fair where like they were doing on the spot interviews and like they're gonna hire people right there. Like I had no idea going in. I don't know what it was. I just went to the event like in a suit, right? I was like, that's what you do. That's it. I didn't have business cards. I didn't have any of that, right? Um, what you'll find with networking is that it's a lot more simpler than you think it is. Most events, it's essentially a bunch of companies are together. You go to a rep and you just talk to them. You can ask them questions about the job. You can ask them questions about, what it's like working there, talk about your skills. You can try to build a relationship. The way I see it, there's kind of two ways you can network, right? And I guess so there's the more like relationship focused way, and then there's a more just like information focused way. So I know a lot of people like to identify themselves as introverts, so they're kind of worried about the whole like relationship part of networking and like, oh my god, I have to like relate to this person and talk about sports or something, and then like follow up with them and be like, oh hey, you want to go to coffee chat? Like you don't have to do all that. Like sure, that helps. Building a relationship can be very helpful, and for certain fields like that might actually be what you have to do. What I found that like as an accounting student or like a part of like a much bigger field, so I guess you could like for any of like the major fields you could say that, where there's actually like a lot of employment opportunities, is that I took more of like an information approach. It was I would go to every networking event and I would try to ask really good questions that I would get to know the career better. Right. So I would go in and ask questions like, oh hey, what does your day-to-day look like? What are the most important soft skills? What sets a candidate like what do you see in like a star employee? So I asked these types of questions so I could get a better idea of what do I need to focus on myself to become like a top candidate when I'm applying to these jobs, right? Like, what skills do I need to develop, and how do I need to present myself, and what are these companies actually looking for? Because the problem is, you might be talking a lot about how you got like an A plus in first year accounting, but then if you don't know from networking talking to the company, like they don't really care if you have an A plus, as long as you have like a B, it's fine. What they care more about is like how are you as like a team member and how are you as someone to work with, right? So you want to be able to like bounce off different ideas with like some of these people, because a lot of times when you're networking with these representatives from companies, they're people who are not much older than you, right? So they'll be like 22 to like 26 most of the time. Sometimes you'll get managers who are in like their 30s, or people who are even older, but a lot of the times they'll just bring alumni from your school who are a few years out, right? Um, so it's important that just bounce ideas off them. Like don't worry, like sure, you might never see this person again. Like it's okay, right? You just ask them questions. Don't worry. You don't have to worry about the relationship part if you're worried about maintaining that. Just try to get like some good information out of them so you have a better idea of like what you need to do and how you need to present yourself to land this job, right? Of course, the other side is the whole relationship management thing where you want to like build a good connection with them and follow up with them and and all that stuff, and maybe you guys can talk a little bit more about that. But personally, I just couldn't do that. I just focused on asking good questions and building like a database of knowledge in my head. So essentially, like I feel like I had a much better understanding than any other like accounting student in my year on like how I need to present myself and what I need to do in order to get this job. So that's how I approach networking. And it was very easy because I went in thinking, okay, I'm never going to see this person again. I'm just going to get the information I need, say, hey, thanks for the conversation, and leave. Or give them my business card and then leave, right? So then if I apply, like they'll see my name. If they like talking to me, then they'll like, they'll say something. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with some points, but I think personally, like being able to go on a lot of these different coffee chats and these like going straight to the office and going on these office tours and stuff like that, um, like has really given me a significant advantage in terms of networking and stuff like that. Uh, Contrary to Saad, I'd say I'm a lot more of like one of those relationship networkers. Like I'd say to an extent, you're going to have a lot of information that you're seeking. But in terms of just like networking in general and building relationships, like I'm never going on a coffee chat to just talk about sports or to talk about video games or whatever. That's not the point. Like in the end, networking is like you're trying to like develop this network of professionals, to keep all your different options open and trying to get an in with some sort of a company, right? And like Saad mentioned, like even if you do build a lot of these personal relationships and really build like a large network of people, they know it's never personal, right? So like if like I'm like talking to someone at PwC or whatever, and I establish a great connection with them, and then I might be talking to someone at Deloitte or KPMG or EY or whatever, and I have these great connections with everyone, and they know that you're a student or whatever, and they know that you have to make a decision. So and chances are they're also networking with like 1,000 other people as well. So they're never going to take it personally. So, but as far as like networking goes, like I think developing a solid relationship with someone really tells them how genuine you are. And for me, networking personally is not just about networking. Like I actually do want to like seek mentorship, and I want to seek that guidance, right? I want to seek all the different advice that I can get, because if the more and more advice you get, it's not going to hurt you at all, right? So I think definitely developing personal relationships in terms of networking will, I feel, give you a little bit of an edge, because they can sort of vouch for you. They'll be like, yeah, I've been on a bunch of coffee chats with this person, I've been to lunch with this person, blah 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 blah. And he would be a really great representative at our firm or whatever. Also, he knows how to talk. He actually has he's passionate about like certain things, and he's not just like this sort of like one-dimensional person.
Yeah, I mean, there's not too much I can add in terms of networking. Saad and Emad really went into depth with that, and that's really great. I think, like as they mentioned, like a good thing about networking is getting to know people, getting to understand their careers better, and eventually getting referrals for the jobs themselves. And I think another thing you could do with networks is you can leverage them to help you with the interview prep itself, because people don't really realize how much effort goes into interview prep. Like accounting, IB, management consulting, they all have different types of interviews, involve a lot of cases, they involve stock pitches, a lot of very specific and nuanced things. So being able to do mock interviews and prep with people who are already in those firms and those types of positions, that's really valuable, and it'll give you insight that you can't just figure out on your own. So yeah, it's pretty much
Yeah,
it.
that's actually a really good point.
Yeah, 100%
Definitely.
agree.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I would add to networking is I want to preface it by saying you're not alone. No one actually likes it. Everyone hates it. Even the guy you're networking with, it's part of his job to be there. So like it is what it is. It's that awkward thing. You just have to it's like a mental hump you have to get over. I wanted to say one really good way to network, in my opinion, is extracurriculars. One of the guys I played soccer with, this guy ended up working in Cali. He started his own like website and firm and all of those things. I absolutely did not know anything about him except the fact that this guy's shots were hard as hell. That's all I knew. And he was a really good soccer player. But later when I found out, we already had built that connection, and it was really cool because it's not ingenuine. Like I knew him from playing soccer, and then we kind of hit it off from there. And like for instance, like with Saad, 10 years from now, if he's like a manager or like the CFO of like PwC, I'm going to know him from like this podcast and meeting him outside of school, not by going on a coffee chat with him. Right. And so to the extension of that, the one thing I wanted to say was think long term in that network with your peers, because all of your peers are going to end up at like really, really good places. And you can just do that by being friends with them, having coffee with them, having lunch with them, because the fact of the matter is, like, yeah, you might not have too many networks in the big four or whatever, but you're building a foundation for your future. And later down 5 or 10 years from now, if you're looking for a career shift, you don't have to go on LinkedIn and cold call someone. You literally have your boy's phone number in your pocket who's like a manager or director at like BCG or Deloitte or whatever. And that's going to be a lot more meaningful than you trying to be a 30-year-old trying to coffee chat. So I think that's kind of what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I just want to add a point there. Sorry, I just want to add a point saying like just developing that network is so important, because having your boy's phone number or having your boy by your side and just having that sort of connection, it gives you that in with the company. And I just want to say, like, if it's one of the regrets that I have, it's just start networking as early as possible, because you don't know like what those connections can lead to, right? They could be very, very, very beneficial in terms of like where you end up in the future.
Yeah, like a lot of these jobs that you look for like after graduation. So I think like as I was saying, in like your 30s and things like that, these like experienced career jobs, most of them are not posted. They're filled like internally, right? So having that network actually does help a lot, right? Either internally like within the company or through like internal connections, right? So a lot of them don't actually go out there and they're not posted, right? So yeah, having that network helps a lot. As far as like networking events, if you are a first year, you don't have to be like, if you're like very scared of networking events, you can just like test the waters, ask some questions, learn more about different careers. Definitely at like Emad was saying, I think the relationship approach is ultimately better. But if you are very scared of networking, as I'm pretty sure like all of you in grade 12, 11, as you come into a first year, as you might be, your first networking event, you don't have to worry about the relationship part, but yeah, like you will get a lot more out of it. But you can start off with just trying to get information. That's okay too.
All right, I just want to end this off by thanking all of you guys for taking the time to be here. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing your insights. I hope the people watching this can learn from it and make a more informed decision. But yeah, thank you guys once again. And yeah, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Great, no problem. I guess if any of the viewers have any questions about accounting or McMaster, you can feel free to reach out to me on Facebook.
Sounds good. I'll add your information when we're posting this on YouTube, and then hopefully someone networks with you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, get on it. Like in your grade 12, it's important to start building those connections with the older students. Or in my case, I'm an alumni now, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't think either of us here are pretty intimidating people. We actually like we encourage you guys who are listening to
Yeah.
reach out to us because we also want to give that sort of advice to you guys.
Yeah.
For sure.
Good.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for
Awesome.
having us.
Thank you.